All right, let's dive into a wild story. Imagine a set of really complex, radical ideas cooked up in the intellectual cafes of Paris, somehow making their way across the Atlantic to completely shake up the political and cultural world of the United States. It's a pretty incredible journey, and today we're going to trace how this abstract theory became central to America's culture wars.
Think about it. The term identity politics, we hear it all the time now, right? It's on the news, it's debated on college campuses. But what if I told you that its deep roots are actually in a French philosophical movement that was at first not political at all? We're about to connect those dots, from super abstract philosophy to the real and, often very heated debates we're all living through today.
So to really get this, you have to picture two totally different scenes. On one hand, you've got Paris in the 1960s. It's all about abstract philosophy, with thinkers questioning the very idea of a single objective truth. But then, fast forward to American campuses in the 1980s. When those same ideas landed there, whoa, they took on a whole new life. The abstract suddenly became intensely political. This wasn't just a fun intellectual game anymore, it was basically the ammunition for the start of the culture wars. To see how this happened, we got to look at the ideas themselves. Think of French philosophers like Michel Foucault and Jacques Derrida as creating a powerful toolkit, a whole set of new concepts for taking apart ideas that everyone just took for granted. Ideas about power, knowledge, and even language itself. And you have to understand just how radical this was. The basic argument was, hey, there's no such thing as a neutral, objective truth just floating out there. Nope. What we call truth is actually built, produced, by systems of power. And if that's true, it means you can take language apart, piece by piece, deconstruct it, and find all the hidden power dynamics working behind the scenes.
And here is the exact moment everything changes. American academics grabbed that abstract French idea that truth is created by power, and they gave it a very specific, very political target. As one scholar famously put it, objectivity is synonymous with subjectivity of the white male. All of a sudden, boom, it wasn't just a philosophical puzzle anymore, it was a political weapon. And out of this, a whole new political strategy started to form, especially during the conservative Reagan era. The source we're looking at calls it a return of the repressed, a point where the left really shifted its focus. So instead of big, broad, class-based politics, the energy moved toward building alliances based on very specific identities. And that became a powerful new approach in the brewing culture wars.
Now, this new way of seeing the world didn't just stay in the philosophy department. Oh no, it exploded across American universities. It sparked this incredible wave of brand new fields of study, and each one was dedicated to looking at the world through the lens of a particular identity.
So first up, you have cultural studies. This was revolutionary. It took the serious, high-minded tools that people use to analyze literature and aimed them straight at popular culture. Things that were once dismissed as just junk, sitcoms, B-movies, pop music, were suddenly seen as really important things to study.
The argument was that pop culture wasn't just fluff. It was a battlefield of ideas, a place where you could fight back against dominant narratives. You had academics writing super serious papers about Madonna as a postmodern feminist hero. But, and this is a big but, the source points out a major critique. By focusing so much on the text, these scholars often completely ignored the huge corporate machine, the Madonna industry that was actually selling all this supposed resistance for a huge profit. Okay, next up, post-colonial studies. This field took that very same French toolkit and applied it to history, and the goal was absolutely radical, to rewrite the entire story of the world, but this time from the perspective of the people who were colonized, not the colonizers.
The whole method was a game changer. It was all about taking apart what they called the Western myth of a single, straight line of history. The goal was to build a counter-history, and that meant going back and rereading the most respected classics of Western literature, like Shakespeare's The Tempest, and hunting for the hidden, often totally unconscious, fingerprints of colonialism all over them.
And that brings us to gender and queer studies, which is arguably where these French theories really found their most powerful application. Because here, the toolkit wasn't just used to look at an identity that already existed, it was used to blow up the whole idea of sexual identity being stable at all.
Thinkers like Judith Butler came along and made this mind-bending argument that gender isn't some deep, fixed thing inside you. Instead, it's a performance. It's a series of acts or compulsory citations that we're all taught to repeat over and over. This totally changed the conversation. It moved away from just defending an oppressed identity and more toward a post-identity analysis of how these norms are built in the first place. And that opened up the study of all those blurry, in-between, queer spaces of identity.
Okay, but as these theories got more and more complex inside the university, a really big criticism started to surface. People began to notice a growing gap, a real disconnect between these high-level academic debates and the actual struggles people were facing out on the streets.
This quote from the scholar Henry Louis Gates Jr. just nails that critique perfectly. The big question became, were all these intellectual fights actually changing the world? Or were academics just winning arguments against each other in journals, swatting at flies, while the real giants of inequality and power were left completely untouched?
And this led to a really sharp critique, especially from Marxist thinkers. They basically argued that these new identity theories had swapped out the concrete fight for class struggle with these purely symbolic, textual conflicts. The focus, they said, had shifted from changing people's real material lives to just winning wars of words, turning political resistance into something as simple as, say, dressing like Madonna.
Now get a load of this statistic. Between 1980 and 1990, the number of Americans who identified as Native American on the census shot up by 255%. The text uses this as an example of this broader social trend, a kind of identity-based withdrawal from a really tough economy, where claiming and affirming a minority identity became a major focus for a lot of people.
So, after this whole long intellectual journey, where did we end up? What's the final legacy? Well, the source argues that in a deeply ironic twist, these ideas didn't just stay on campus. They got soaked up into the very system they were meant to critique: consumer capitalism.
You see, advertisers and marketers are smart. They quickly figured out how powerful this new language of identity was. The rise of minority identities, that became a strategy for niche marketing. The celebration of subcultures, music labels figured out how to package and sell rap and reggae to a mass audience. A focus on diversity? Well, that created whole new consumer markets like gay tourism. The language of rebellion became just another sales pitch.
And this, right here, is the ultimate irony that the source lays out. A set of radical ideas designed to take apart and critique systems of power ended up handing a brand new vocabulary to consumer capitalism. The system didn't just tolerate difference, it learned how to sell it.
Which leaves us with a really big question, doesn't it? From the lecture halls of Paris all the way to the targeted ads popping up on our phones today, this whole journey proves that once a powerful idea is out in the world, it can take on a life of its own. So you have to wonder, when an idea is this powerful, who really gets to decide how it's used?